like I'm still going to keep my code, so fine, but
yeah, okay,
it needs to change.
cool. Yeah, so we'll add, just add a line then that's going to bring in another variable. It's going to load in the other file, and we'll save it to a variable. Okay. Let me know when you're ready with that.
I'm all good.
Yeah.
I'm all good now.
Cool. So you both. Well, so if you run it, have you got two matrices that come up? File 1 and file 2. Nice. Okay. We're gonna work. Let's work with the first one for now. So I'm just gonna write this down just so I've got it here for reference. But so like my file 1, I'm actually gonna work with file 2, but it doesn't matter which you work. I'll work with file 1. Fine. When my file 1, my row 1 goes 1, 193, 3. Just so I know what values you've got in yours. That should be useful to know just for the first 2 rows. Cool. So Crystal, what are your first 2 rows?
I've got 151, 1, and then
So 151, 1.
a 151, 1.
1. Okay. And your second row?
52, 100, 4.
4. Okay. And Bexy?
It's 385, then 544, then 5.
Yeah.
Then 545, 1329, and 1. That's a long look.
I was just gonna say that's a lot. Cool. Okay, great. That's just for my reference. So okay. Cool. Okay. So what we're gonna do, so if we think about what this final matrix is gonna look like, the idea is that we have a column that has all the frame numbers from 1 until whatever the final frame number is that we need. And in each row, it's going to have a 1 in the column that has the code, and all the other columns will be zeros. Yeah, that makes sense. So
the one in the column of the one will represent.
Yeah, so you will have, so Crystal, in your first row, the column that represents the puppet is going to have a 1, and the column that represents the partner look will have a 0. The column that represents the inattentive will have a 0.
So it's just the puppet look that's going to be coded, right?
It's just whatever they're looking at. So if they're looking at the partner, you'll have a column. You'll have a column that's for the puppet. You'll have a column that's for looks to partner. A column that's for inattentive.
Yeah.
And whatever they're doing for each frame, that row, it will have a 1 in the right column, and the rest will be zeros.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Okay. So what there's a couple of things we need to. There's a couple of steps to this. So one of the things that we want to make sure we're doing is making sure that whatever code we write is usable for any file that we put into it. Yeah. So they all have obviously they will have different coding, they have different start frames, like Crystal, your one starts at frame 1, but Bexy, yours starts at frame 385. So we would actually want all of them to start at frame 1, and if they're just all zeros until it kicks in, then so be it, but we want to make sure it's usable for all options. And likewise at the end, my one ends at 17688, and yours, both of yours, I imagine, will end at other numbers, right? And even the mum and the infant ones will end at different numbers. Yeah, they're going to go onto the same matrix. So that's something we need to also make possible. So what that means is we won't hard code any values. So hard code means when we actually type in specific numbers into the code. Instead, we'll use variables. So we'll use ways. What we want to do is we'll find ways to read whatever is in our files. So we'll use the information that's in the files that we're pulling in to determine, for example, what our final row number is. Yeah. So if the infant and the mum, if the highest number there is 18,000, we want to make sure that there's 18,000 rows. But we can't hard code the number 18,000 into the code, because if the next parent comes along and there's 19,000 rows, we don't want it to stop at 18,000. We want it to work out that we need 19,000 rows. But all of these numbers we have in our files. So we have numbers in our files for start frame, for start and end frames for each interaction, and also for the final thing. And then obviously we're going to use the codes as well to create the columns. Okay, actually I'm going to open file number 2. I'm sorry, I'm just going to use this other file because I think it's going to help me. This is going to be easier. Okay. Okay. Okay, yeah. So there's 2 steps we need to do here. So one is concerning the frame numbers and getting something down with all the frame numbers in one column, and the other is concerning the codes and where we put them. And those are kind of 2 separate processes that we're gonna do. So I think we will start with the frame numbers. That's okay. So we'll start with the frame numbers. So something we need to do is I'm just trying to work out whether to use my method or Dimitri's method, because I think Dimitri's is quite clever. I don't know if it's more complicated to. One second, sorry. I'm also trying to work, because Crystal, yours is coded differently, so I'm just trying to work that out as well. Because Dimitri's wouldn't work. This wouldn't work for your one. Okay, maybe we can sort that out retrospectively afterwards and tidy up. But okay, let's. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's start with, I think we did do that, didn't we? So let's just recap the concept of the for loop. Okay, so what the for loop does, if you remember, so we've always got a for and an end, and the for loop will have a range that we're essentially going to work through consecutively, and then it's going to do something for each turn in that range. So if you've got the numbers 1 to 5 and you do for 1 to 5, you're going to do something when it's the number 1, and then when it will end and it will go to the number 2, and it will do something, then it'll go to number 3, do something, 4 something, and 5 something. So let's just do that where we're going to, this is what we did last week, but let's just do that where we say we're just going to print the numbers. So we're going to look at the range 1 to 5, and we're just going to print the numbers as they go through. Okay. Let's see. I mean, we kind of did something like this last week. So let's see if you remember what we need to do here before. So we don't just put the range. We need to always, we need to essentially create a variable when we start this for loop, and then we're going to do something. So the variable represents the range that we are referencing. We're going to do something to that variable. So yeah, often we use I and J for these. So I'm going to say I. We're going to do the range. I'm going to do the range, the numbers 1 to 5. And then what would we put? What do we want if we just want to print down here in the command window? If we just want to print the number, what would we put?
Print F.
Sorry?
Print F.
You don't need, so that would be to write some text. But if we just want to, so if I do this, what do we do if we just want to show the value of a variable? Sorry?
Display.
Sorry.
Lisp, like display.
You can do, but it's even simpler than that. We don't even need to do that. So if I write I equals 5, and I just want to show the value, if I want to later show the value of I can literally just type the letter I, and that will show, this line is the one that shows me the I. But then if I can remember, I can put the semicolon to not show it, so it'll hide it. But just by putting a variable name, you're basically calling the variable. So if we want to, in this for loop, if we want to call down to the command window the value as it loops through 1 to 5, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we'll just put the letter I in there.
Yep.
Yeah. So that should, when you press play, when you press run, it should, yeah. So it goes through this loop. So it goes through once, it calls number 1, 2, number 2, 3, 4, 5. And I think we looked at this last week, didn't we? We looked at the breakpoints. So if you put a break at line 45 by clicking on that little dash, what that will do is it will pause it every time when it hits the end. So because it's a for loop, it's actually going to hit that end 5 times here because we've got 5. So it's just a good exercise to see that when you press run, you're just going to get I equals 1 because it's gone through that loop once. And now when you press play again, it knows that it's got to go back and do it again because it hasn't got to number 5 yet. So you press continue, and now it will show number 2 because it's done the second loop through. And now it's done number 3, 4, and 5 as you click through. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Bex, does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, we can do anything we want in there. So also what's useful to know is in your workspace now, you have a value for I after you've run that. You might have a quick debugging button, which you might need to press to get back just to the normal thing, but I've turned off my breakpoint now. But you'll have a value for I in your workspace. Well, I've got one here from doing this. If I double click on that and look at that, the value is 5. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's purely because the final state of I is 5. So it kind of remains at that final state, which is useful to know as well. So we can do anything to I. While we're in here, we can do anything to I that we want. We can print I, and then we can say I equals I to the power of 2. And then we can print I again. And now it should say 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9, 4, 16, 5, 25 when we run it, because we're getting it to print the value of I and the value of I squared. Then it's looping back and it's doing I again, and then I squared, then printing I, then I squared, etc., etc. So whatever you want to do to that value in here, it will do for every iteration. So it'll do it when I equals 1, then when I equals 2, I equals 3, I equals 4. I know I'm going on and on about the same thing here, but it's essentially just what that's just trying to show what the for loop does. So thinking about if you think about our file, obviously we've got different numbers in here, but your first rows, so Crystal, you're 151, and Bexy, you're 385 to 544. What we want it to do is we want to print all the frame numbers, right? So we don't just want it to go 60. We don't want it to just go, Bexy, you don't want it to go 385 and then 544, or for Crystal 1 to 151. You want all the numbers in between as well, right? So what we need to do is create a range that goes from that first number in the row to the second number in the row. And what the range will do is it will look at all the numbers in between that as well. So let's find a way that we can look. So instead of saying 1 to 5, so if you now replace, so let's just keep it as I in here. So what we're going to do is, instead of having 1 to 5, we're going to have, like for my one, I want it to go from 608 to 650. That's what my first two things are. So if you both put your first two numbers in, so Crystal, if you put from 1 to 51, and Bex, if you put from 385 to 544, and then you put I, and then you run it, you should get all of those numbers printing at the bottom. It does limit like the last 20 or something, last 42 or something. Yeah, is that working?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now if we want to, because we've got to make this usable with any file, so obviously we don't want to say 608 and 650. How would you now, just give it a go, try and reference the cell in your file.
Reference the column.
If that makes sense. So yeah, try and reference the. Have you both done that, or do you want to? I don't want to give the answer. I can't. Do that. So basically, we're going to pick the cells. So we're going to do that, taking the file which we have as a variable name, and you're going to look for row 1, column 1. Your range is going to go from whatever's in row 1, column 1, up to whatever's in row 1, column 2.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So what have you got inside these brackets? What have you both got?
I've got 1, is it 1, 1?
Mm-hmm. And then the second one?
1, comma 2.
Lexi, what have you got?
I just put sort of semicolon, just a colon. It's not right.
So you put what? A colon here?
Yeah.
Colon means.
Doesn't that mean, yeah, that means all?
Yeah.
Means everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so if you just want row 1 instead of all the rows.
It's not working.
What have you got?
I put 1 and 2 in the first one, and then 2 and 3 in the next.
So which cell is 1, 2 looking at? Which row and which column?
Isn't that looking at the first row and the second column?
Yeah. And then what if you put 2, 3 for the next one? Did you
It's
say?
looking at, yeah, so then it's looking at the second row and the third column.
Yeah, so that's going to be doing a range, but well, mine it would do a range between 6, 6, 1 and 4.
Yeah, it's not showing anything. I think that's would be why I put a semicolon at the end. Oh, it's still not.
How would you get it to go between row 1, column 1, and row 1, column these two cells?
Isn't it just 1, 2?
1, 2 is this one is row 1, column 2.
So colon, isn't it? To go between. Oh, is that right? Is that wrong?
Yeah, so the colon, so the colon's in here, so that's the range. So it's like, where are we going from and where are we going to? So we're going from this very first cell, right? We're going from row 1, column 1, right? Which means that the first one needs to be row 1, column 1, so it'd be 1, 1.
1, 1, okay.
And then we're going to go up to row 1, column 2.
Oh yeah, now it's working.
Yeah, great. So it should look like that, right? So you got 1, 1 and 1, 2 in the brackets, yeah? So that's going from 1, 1 to 1 to 1, 2. Do you have open I find it quite useful to have open whichever matrix or whatever you're using.
I have a question, but I think you're probably just going to teach us this in the next bit now, of how you actually display, because obviously like with the for loops, it just displays the last number, right? So how do you get the command window to actually display, or to get the variable to display all numbers?
Down the whole list, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we'll do now.
Okay, cool.
So what we'll do, so what we need to do is, so what this is now doing is we've got a range from here to here, right? So I've got the wrong one opening. From here to here, from each row, we've got start frame to the end frame. That's the range that we've got. What we need to do now is to do all of our rows, right? We need to do the same thing for every row. Yeah.
So there must be an easy way to just do it that you can't, because you can't just put in 19,000.
Paste, yeah.
And the other issue with that isn't just the space, but it's that every file has a different length.
Yeah.
So what do we? That's a good point. So what do we need to work out? So how many? So we know that we're going to loop through. We know we're jumping from here to here in this for loop. We're basically going to put this for loop inside another loop. We now need to loop through each row, right? To do the same thing in each row. We're just going to do this. We basically want to go through like this. We're going to da 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 like that.
Is it all? Does all count in this?
Yeah.
Function.
Yeah. So we're going from which. So what we've defined here is a range from one column to another column. But now what we're going to do is go from what? From one row down to another row. Yeah, so we're going to start. So our 2 and so if we just think about it in terms of again this colon, the from 2. I'm just going to put in another for loops there. Then the from is going to be row 1. But the 2, so it's a number 1. I'm just going to put a number 1. I'm just going to put number 1 just to denote it as a number 1 for now. So row 1 up to how many rows?
Well, it depends, right? So
yeah, it depends. It depends. So there is a command that will tell us how many rows we have in the data.
Perfect.
So it will just return a number. So I'm just going to comment out this for a sec because we can have a look at that. So if you put, we'll have to remember how to do this. There's a couple of different ways. So I'm just going to call it something. So k equals size. That's been put file length equals, I think it's size of file 1, column 1. So it's telling me that it's 72. If I do, sorry, I've got file 2 open. So I get 237. I just want to check something because there's a length. I know there's a length thing as well. There's not. Oh yes, there's two ways of doing it. Either you can use this size command, and then you specify the column, or because there's is uniform here where all of our columns end at the same row, you can just put length and then you put just the file name, and it will tell you how long the file is in terms of rows. So both of these are valid for working out the length of something, the length of the thing. Does that make sense? So we just use this like size command or length command to work out how many rows we have in the file. And I'm just saving that value now here as a variable that I've called file length, which now appears up here, and it's just the number 237. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to pull back, create this code. So now we're going from row number 1 up to which row?
The file length variable.
The file length variable, yeah. So either you can declare it, or you could also just put this in as well. You could also just put this code in here, and it would also work. You don't necessarily need to call it. You don't necessarily need to put a variable. You can do, but you could also. I might do the length one actually. It's a bit shorter, isn't it? So you can just say up to the length, because this equals the number, for me, this equals the number 237. So this is going from row 1 up to row 237. And for both of you, it will go up to, it will represent a different number.
Yeah.
It's going to cycle through those numbers. So what you can actually do is, if you just comment all of that out and you just put, if you just do one of those little for loops again, and you just say for I equals 1 to length, and whichever file you're using, print the letter I, print the variable I and end. What do you see if you just do that? So when we did it earlier, we did the range 1 to 5.
Oh, I've done something wrong because I've just got a lot of ones.
You got a lot of ones?
Yeah.
What have you put? For I equals 1 to...
I equals 1 to length equals 1. Let me just...
Does it work on yours, Bexy? Oh, you muted. Oh, you muted. You muted, Bexy. Sorry,
I muted myself because Dimitri's talking in Greek. It's quite distracted. So I got loads of numbers between 1 and 186 for mine.
Did you want to say that? How many row? So it should actually be up here in your workspace. It should probably, yours probably says 186 times 3.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. So you've got 100 rows.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome.
I just had to clear my command window. I don't know. I think it's because, I don't know, I've obviously done something earlier. So I just cleared it to make and run it again.
Have you got the clear thing right at the top here?
Yeah, but I just did evaluate. I think I just pressed like evaluate or run a certain section. So it actually didn't.
Is it working now?
Working now. It's all good.
Oh, nice. Okay. So how many have you got?
80.
Cool. Okay. So you've got 80 rows. So this is going to work in exactly the same way as the 1 to 5 works. So all that this length file 2 or whatever you've called it is a number. It's just a number. It's just the final row number. It's the length of the file. So it's going to go through, as you can see in the command window, you're now going to, if you think of these in terms of row numbers, you're basically going through row 1, then row 2, then row 3, then row 4, all the way up to whatever the final row is where you've got data.
Yeah.
So it's just a really useful way to make sure that you're going through every row in your data. So we're going to use that. I'm going to uncomment this original for loop that we're working on. We're going to use that. So we're going to go through from 1 to the final row, and we're going to do the calling of we're going to print out each of those numbers. We need to give this another value name, so we can't just put the range, but the same way that we said I here, we're going to need to call it something. So since it's a row number, should we put the letter R? So we can just say for R equals. So that means for every time you're looping around, the value for R changes. The first loop, it's R equals 1. The second loop, R equals 2. The third loop, R equals 3. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Let me see, it probably will run. It's not correct yet, the code, but. Okay, if you run it, if you run that, what do you get?
And I have one that's, just says my last code, there's my 51, which is my running through the first row sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then last one.
Yeah.
The column and then the last one.
So you've got a load of I values, but the last one's 51.
Yeah.
Okay, and Bexy?
I have got loads of I values. The last one's 544.
Yeah.
Great. So the code is working.
Yeah.
But that's obviously not what we want, right? So why are we getting? Then I don't know if you can see it. If you can scroll back far enough in your command window, but can you see what's happening in your command window?
Yeah, mine started at like 30 or something, so it doesn't only shows you. Oh, it's all like messed up. Mine is yours?
Yeah, see if you can work out what it's doing. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it necessarily in the command window. See if you can work out what it's doing.
32, 33.
I'll tell you what, a way to work it out is if you put.
Oh, then it goes 1 again.
If you print R and I, print both of them like this, and run that, you might get it might help you understand what's happening here.
Oh, it's going R-I.
Yeah, so we want to look at both. So for every loop, so we're actually looping through. Yeah. So see if you can work out why it stopped. Why is it printing so many? You got it's printed loads of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Can you see what it's doing? Can you see where the R value? So your R value should start at, I don't know what your R value is. What's your R value at the end, both of you?
Mine's still printed. Okay. Oh, so our value is 186.
Okay.
I is 544.
Okay, I'm just going to write this down. So this is 186, and Crystal, what's yours?
80.
Sorry, what's your R value?
R value is 80.
80, okay. So if you scroll up where your R value, so Bexy, your R value was 186, and Crystal, yours was 80. You scroll up, does the R value change?
Yeah. At some point it does, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's reading the rows.
Yeah. Bexy, is yours changing as you scroll up?
Sorry, what did you say?
If you scroll up in your command window, is your R value changing? So it's 186, you said at the bottom.
Oh.
If you scroll up, does it change?
Our number at the top is 183.
And at the bottom is 186.
Yeah.
If you scroll up from the bottom, so Bexy, can you find where it changes from 185 to 186? And Crystal, can you find where it changes from 79 to 80? In your output.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, can you see it?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, sorry. No, yeah, this should be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I found it.
It's going to take you a bit longer, Bexy, because you've got more numbers.
I think it's quite far up.
Yeah, it'll be a third of that.
Ah, okay.
Have you found it?
Yeah.
Bexy, what's your I value? When your R value is 185, that final one, what's the I value?
544.
Okay, and then when your R changes to 186, now what's your I value gone to?
385.
Right. Yours is going from when your R is 80, when your R is 79, that final I value is what?
51.
And then when R goes to 80,
then I equals 1.
Cool.
I
Can you work out why? Can you work out why it's doing that? If you look at this if you look in the for loop that we've got, can you work out why it's? Do you know what it's doing and why it's printing that?
Because it's doing some sort of duplication, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's gone through. Is it because we've done one of the things first? I don't know if it matters if the length we've done it in, but because it's doing, it's not looking at all the rows first. It's looking at the it's looking at the row 1, column 1, row 1, column 2 first before it's going down all the rows.
Yeah. Have you got any? Is there anything in your output that looks at the actual numbers that you've got in row 2, row 3, row 4?
The R, the length.
Where the I, so have you got anywhere? So the value is the I. So is there have you got any I's that are beyond what's one? Have you got any, Bexy?
I can't see any.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, there shouldn't be any. Do you know what's happening here, Bexy?
Sorry, I can't hear you very well. There's a
Sorry.
lot of loud noise behind me.
Do you know what's happening? Do you know what's happening here in what we've got? Why it's repeating these numbers?
No.
Okay. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, is it like the average time between the two numbers?
No, but it is doing something with the two numbers. So it's, if we think about, I think if we describe the for loop in just like normal sentences, hopefully it'll make sense. So we've basically got a for loop inside a for loop, right? So we're doing a big overall loop, and then for each, so this loop says we want to look through each row one by one. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's so from row 1 to row whatever the length is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Whatever the length is / final row is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then while we do that, so for each of those loops
is looking back at row 1, column 1, row 1, column 2.
Yeah, exactly. So look through each number we're currently looking at cell 1 to cell 1 2, all in row 1. So what we're doing here is we're going right, look through row. I want you to loop from the numbers 1 to, well, you both got different ones. So Bexy, you've got 1 to 86, and Crystal, yours is 1 to 80. And for each of those loops, so I want to make the letter R is going to start at number 1. And while I do that, I'm going to make I, for Bexy, you're going to make I 385, the range from 385 to 544, and Crystal 1 to 51. And then once you've done that loop, go back to the start of this big loop and change the value of R to row number 2, to 2. But do the same thing again. Look again at 608 to 650 for me, or 385 to 544 for you. Bexy and 1 to 51. Does that make sense what it's doing? It's hard to explain it, but I'm just going to use my number. Yeah, does that make sense?
You might have to explain it again.
Can I use my numbers just so I think it'll be easy so I can show it? So this is my file. So I've got 608 to 650 at the front, at the top, sorry, and my whole thing is 237 rows. So we've got 2 for loops here. So sorry. So we're just creating 2 values. We're creating a value for I and a value for R. So we're saying we want to loop from the range 1 up to the length of my file, which is 237. So there's going to be 237 loops here. So it's going to loop through 237 times. And for each of those loops, I is going to become whatever, a range from whatever this number is. So cell 11, which is 608, up to cell 12, which is 650. So basically R is going to start at 1, and while it's 1, I is going to loop. It's going to go from it's going to go from 608 up to 650. So it's going to go 608, 609, 610, 611, 612. When this gets to 650, when I gets to 650, this loop is going to end, and it's going to come back to the beginning, and now R is going to go up to the next number, which is 2. So R will become 2, but letter I again is going to loop through from 608 to 650. And then R is going to become 3, and I is going to loop from 608 to 650. And R is going to become 4, and I is going to loop from 608 to 650. But we don't want, does that make sense? Does that make sense? What that's doing?
Yeah, that does.
Okay, but we obviously don't want I to always loop from 608 to 650. When R is 1, we want 608, it to loop from 608 to 650. But when R is 2, what do we want it to loop between or from and to?
651 to 661.
651 to 661. Exactly. So if I just put down actually let me put, okay, so I'm just going to write something here. This doesn't make sense in terms of the way it's written with the other code, but it's just to show you something. Okay, so we want it the first time, when R is 1, we want it to loop from 608 to 650, correct? So that's from row 1, column 1, up to row 1, column 2. The second time, and when that's all done, we want it to go R will become number 2. So we want this row. And what we want to happen is we want it to loop from here, 651, as you said. So 651 is row 2, column 1, up to 661, which is row 2, column 2. Yeah? And then when that's done, it'll go back, and R will now become 3. So row 3, we want it to loop from here to here, 662 to 888. And that is row 3, column 1, up to row 3, column 2. Can you see, so with loops, we're always looking like increments, because we're incrementing here from 1 up to, mine goes 1 to 237. We're looking for increments. Can you see any increments? Can you see any increments in what we're doing with the I value? So this is like loop 1, loop 2, it's going to do this, loop 3, it's going to do this, loop 4, it's going to do this. Oh, you're muted, Crystal. I don't know if you're talking about.
You're going to do as many loops, like I loops, as there are length of rows, right?
Yeah, that's up here. That's the first one. Yeah.
But like, because this is I don't know what a better word for it is right now, but like stupid code, right? Because you're not going to just write this for the amount of,
right,
but you need to do it for like the amount of rows there are.
Yeah. So what number? So our I value, when we print our I value each time, this is for like each loop of R. This is what I really, if we hard coded it, would represent. What is staying constant each time and what is changing each time? So when R is 1, this is when
the columns are staying constant.
This is when R equals 2. Yeah. Yeah, so the column stays constant. So we're always going from a value in column 1 up to a value in column 2. So this is we're going from a value in column 1 always up to a value in column 2. Yeah?
Yeah.
What's changing?
The row
number.
Exactly. So we're going from row 1. Second time, when R equals 2, we want to look at row 2 for both of these. When R equals 3, what do we want? What do we want the row number to be?
3.
3. And when R equals 4, what do we want the row number to be?
4.
4. So what could we replace the number with?
Colon.
Oh.
We could replace it with R. So look, we got when R equals 1, we've got row.
I see.
I am getting this.
Okay, Crystal.
When R equals 3, we want it to be row 3. And when R equals 4, we want it to look at row 4. So we can actually replace this with R.
Makes a lot of sense.
And now you've got something that is, it doesn't matter what the length is of your document. Your R value is going to range from 1 all the way up to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to loop within that loop of looking through each row. You're going to make a range between the value in column 1 and column 2 for each row. So when you establish R as number 1 in the first loop, R here will also equal 1. And then when that loop ends, R here will become 2. And because when you declare a variable, everything below it stays as that number until you redeclare it and change it. Mm-hmm. So it gets changed when it loops back. So R gets changed to a number 3, on the third loop, and therefore R equals 3 in here. In the fourth loop, R becomes 4, and therefore it's 4 here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The more you do it, the more it's like, this is actually, I find it quite, this is why I find it quite useful. I found it quite useful when I started to like hard code the numbers, and then you kind of think, oh, well, what can I replace that with? Like, what variable can I replace that with? Because it's, we need to move things. So if you do that,
Matlab's just so like, I'm like, Matlab's really cool. It's really like, it's a better way to do things.
Yeah. So if you change yours, I don't know what code you've got. Have you got this code, but without the R's at the moment? So if you change it to R, and you've got your I and R now in here. So now, because before when you printed it, it was constantly printing row 1, column 1 to row. It was constantly printing your first 2 values. Now it should change. Mm-hmm. Might take a while to print everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Bexy, yours should say R equals 186, and then you got I is 1329. Oh no, sorry. No. What am I talking about? Sorry. What's your last one, Bexy?
What's that? Sorry.
If you run it, what's your last R and I value?
My last R is 84, and the last I is 19200. Which is weird because that number isn't even on the Excel spreadsheet.
Really?
Yeah. The last number on the sheet is 19176.
And it's gone to 19200.
Yeah.
It's definitely the right. You've definitely got to open the right one of the two.
Yeah, I'm sure it was file 2.
All right, we'll look at that in a sec. And your R value is 186, right?
Yeah, actually, you were right. It was the wrong file. It's file 1, I thought we were looking at file 2.
Nice. And Chris,
Actually, yeah.
so you've got 186, and what's your, sorry, what was the last frame? 1920.
Let's change this to file 2.
Oh, so it's not 186. Or change whichever. I'm just putting the numbers here so I can make sure I'm looking at the numbers. Which one? So what's your R value at the end, Bexy?
On file 1, it's 186.
So if you run it for file 1, what's your final frame number, the final I value?
It's 19176, which is correct as per the document.
Great.
That's it.
Amazing. And Crystal, your final R is 80 and I is
16920.
16920. Great.
And then I've looked back where it changes, so where R is 79 and it's right where the line before
where the rows change. Yeah, so Bexy, I guess that's a useful thing to look at. So yeah, if you scroll up, so Bexy as well, if you're, in your command window, it says, the final thing says R is 186, I equals 19176. You scroll up until R changes to 185.
Okay, hold on a second.
You might be moving it might be a long way. Mine's, oh, there we go. That's mine.
When the command window can't hold how much Bexy has to scroll.
Yeah, sorry. If it's a really long, if it's a long window, the last one, then it's it might be a really long window. If you open up, have you got your file open on the left like this?
No.
If you open it and then you look at the final row, it will kind of tell you how far you got it, what your I value is, where you need to get back to.
It's like 8,000 rows.
Oh, right, okay.
So the next number is 11853.
Oh, wow, okay, fine. I doubt it will even show it in the command window. Okay. All I was going to show you, Bexy, was this, that you can look at it on mine, I'll show you, is where it changes. So mine, when R was 236, the final time that R was 236, my I value was 17549, which is this one, row 236. It got up to 17549, and then in the code here, it had basically run out of, it had reached this point. So it had looped through, it had reached this point, it ended, and then it came back and it went to the last number in this range, which is 237, and it starts at whatever.
I see.
Column 1 is, which is here, and then it goes to. So basically, you can kind of see how it goes from here, like here to here, and then when it gets to that, it comes back and does this and this. So it just goes across like this, like zigzags through your document, like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like I get like how it probably makes sense, but it's still probably hard to kind of.
Bless you.
Thanks. Like scratch, but like it's as long as it makes sense, like what you can see and why it's doing it. That's good. So what we're going to do is what we've done is you've now got, so the R values are relevant for us, right? We don't actually need to see the R value. The thing that we need in the document, we need all these I values, don't we? Because we want a column with all these frame numbers going from the start to the end. Yeah. So we need to create a matrix that we're going to put these values into. We need to create a new table that we're going to put these values into, right? So we need to do that before this for loop. We actually need to create. I mean, you could do it. Let's do it, and let's do it actually, and we'll see the error. So if we in this for loop where we work out the I value, so the I value is our frame number. Okay. You could call it frame num if you wanted to call it, or frame number. You can call it anything you want. You don't need to call it I. Instead of just showing the letter I down in the command window, we actually want it to go into a table. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, what do we want to call what do you want to call your table or your matrix? What do you want to call it? Your code with your codes, your matrix. If you want to call it anything you want.
One or matrix or something.
Sorry.
Matrix or matrix 1.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, matrix 1 or matrix. Yeah. That works. Matrix 1. So I could say, I want, for every time you get this new value of I, for this frame number on every loop, we're going to have matrix 1. I've written matrix 1 equals I.
But would that just then post the last I number?
Yeah, exactly. So let's first press run on this and see what happens. If you write matrix 1 equals I. Oh, it is actually working. I wasn't expecting that to work. It won't work. Yeah. So if you do that, what do you get?
It's just printed a load of numbers.
Yeah. So it's basically just done what we did before with the I, but now we've just said matrix 1 equals I, and we haven't put a semicolon, so it's showing the value every time because we haven't put a semicolon. But if you open, you've now got a variable called matrix I. You've created a variable called matrix I, and it just happens to equal the value of I. It could have said 1, it could have said 5,000, but we're actually just going to call it I. It's going to be whatever I is at that time. But if you open matrix 1, what can you see? Do you see a table with all of your numbers?
No.
No, it's just the last number.
It's just the last number. Yeah, exactly. So what do we? If you think about the idea that we're looping through every row, and then through all the numbers. Okay, here's a question. What's your final number? What's your number? What's the number that you've got in matrix 1 now, both of you?
Mine's 16920.
Okay, and yours, Bexy? Cool. Frozen.
Bexy's gone to sleep. I don't know what's happened. Oh, she's back.
There we
You're
go.
back.
I don't know what happened there. I just tried to swap my headphones and then everything went wrong.
It's all right. What did I ask? Oh yeah, did I ask what's the value you've got in matrix 1? Yeah, final value. What's the value you've got there now in matrix 1, Bexy? It's the final value.
It's 19,176.
Okay, great. So here's a question. What row number do you want that to go into? Because at the moment it's in row 1 of this new matrix, but actually what row number do you want to see?
The R.
76, and what row number do you want to see 16920?
The last R.
Yeah. So we're actually lucky here that our frame number equals our row number. We're starting at 1, and we're starting at 1 and going down to whatever it is. So yeah, exactly. We want it to be in we want it to go into the row that it's actually meant. So actually, like in my one, I've got 17736. I actually want to see that in 17736. So you can actually specify here where you want to put the value. So if you think about matrices with the row column thing in the brackets, you can actually say exactly where you want to put the value.
Okay.
So instead of just making matrix 1 a single value, we're going to put it somewhere. So where where are we going to put it? Which row number are we going to put it in, and which column? You could put it wherever you want to. Wherever you want to put it, we could put it in. Put it in column 1 for now. It's up to you where you want to put it.
Would it be R?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
R1 maybe.
Exactly. So I'm just gonna put in column 1 now, just to we can work out later. But yeah, so you're gonna put it in row R. This might give you an error. Let's test. No, it's worked. Okay, fine. Wow, slow. I know. Yeah, I can say why. It might give me it probably says to declare it first. Yeah. Super slow. Hang on, why is it doing that? Hang on a second. One second. It's not right, is it? Hang on. Sorry, not R. It's not R.
No, it's just
not R. So it's putting the value. Sorry,
it's put out like very weird values.
Yeah, it's putting out
how many rows do you want in your final matrix?
As many as we need.
As many as you need for what? As many as you need to display what?
But
in just normal terms, not variable terms, but what?
R2. Like
in like plain English, what's the number that we're putting down there? If you think about
frame number,
the frame number. So as many as we need for the frame number. Which letter in our loop is to do with the frame number? Which one shows? One of them shows the rows, and one of them shows the frame numbers.
I is the frame.
Yeah, I is the frame. We could have changed these instead of calling them I. We could have called it frame number. But remember that this is looping through the two numbers in the two cells. So this is actually our frame number, whereas R is our row number.
Ooh.
Do you want to change these? Do you want? We could call them the row num. You can change them, but it's up to you. If you find it easier to change those variable names, you can call it frame number and row number. Just make sure you change them everywhere. Bexy, did you just change it to an I?
Yeah, and it's worked.
Work, nice. It takes forever. Is yours taking forever like mine to do it?
No, I did it really fast.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mine's not printed into the command window. I just click.
Okay, yeah. That is why it takes forever. So if you I'll put a semicolon and do that as well. Nice. Great. So, but Bexy, I guess yours, the first 384 rows are probably a load of zeros.
Yeah.
Do you know why that is?
Because they weren't coded. So it wouldn't have been marked in the file.
Yeah, and your I value, you're used to calling it I in yours. So the first I value that you ever have in yours is going to be 385, isn't it? Because that's your cell 1, row 1, cell 1 is 385. Yeah. And because we're saying for the matrix to put that number in row number I, yours is going to start in row 385.
Yeah.
It just makes everything, and your final one should go all the way down to the end. So it worked for you? Krista's like going back and forth.
Yeah, I changed all my things and to fuck it.
It's all right. You can change it. Just make sure you change it.
Once I changed this, it's made it problematic now. So I'm just gonna.
The error message might tell you where.
Yeah, I did that earlier. I tried to change it earlier, and then I realized the error message. Then I was like, oh, I'm not going to change it, and then I did. I'm just see. Okay, better.
I might have to go in a minute, guys. I'm starving.
Yeah, it's cool. I was going to just suggest filling in those first. There's one little thing you can do just to fill in those first rows, and then end there. If you want to do that.
Sounds good.
And then at least you've got a complete column of frame numbers.
Does this take really long?
Sorry?
Does it take really long, or have I just done something wrong?
Is it printing everything in your command window?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why it takes long. If you put a semicolon, the line, and then it will. Yeah.
Wait, can I pause? Yeah, I can pause.
Yeah, you can pause and then.
Again and run it again. So.
And then if you open the matrix, so yours should actually start at 1. Yours should start from the start, Crystal.
Yeah, it does. All works. Yeah.
Have you got a file? Have you got another file? If you have another file that doesn't start at 1?
Yeah, the file 2 doesn't start 1.
Yeah, is there any chance if you just swap around at the start though, instead of going through and changing all the file 1s to file 2s, if you just swap at the start up here?
I'll just put file 2.
Yeah, put file 2 and then make sure you change the other one as well to file 1. Swap those two variable names around. Yeah?
Yep.
Cool. It should also work, but it will now start at a different value.
Yeah, it's got zeros until whenever it starts, which starts at it's file 1. Oh, it starts at 715. So it'll be 0.
Okay, so let's fill in. Let's fill in these numbers. So we're basically using exactly the same, similar logic to what we've just done. Okay. Okay, so we want to make. Well, I kind of always think in terms of like this final action, like the final thing I want to do first, and then I kind of work back through what loops I need to do that. So, what do we want to do? We want to print something in a certain cell. Yeah.
Frame number in column 1.
Yeah, it's actually exactly the same. It's exactly the same thing, right?
Yeah, and then or whatever the puppet thing is in the other column.
Yeah, yeah, it's exactly the same, except we're not going to use because we don't have we don't have values in here. We can't reference like this to this, this to this, this to this. So what values? So looking at my file here, what row numbers have I got zeros in?
Everything up to 600 and 607.
Yeah, that makes sense. So anything before 608, yeah, it's going to be a 0.
Yeah.
So I need to create a range. Of numbers. So what am I going to go from, and what am I going to go to?
I guess you need it to go from 1 to whatever the number is before the first number.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to go from 1 to whatever the number is before the first number. So what is the first number in terms of like how do I what's the word?
Could be I minus 1.
Good. Except I doesn't exist yet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. So if I doesn't exist, so thinking a bit long, like even like a step before that, because that's like perfect, like the final thing. I mean, you could do that if we said that I equals this, then we could say, yeah, I minus 1, but this doesn't yet exist. So what is this? If I wanted to say I minus 1, what is that? How do I make I? What do I write to call this cell? What do I write here?
1,1.
Yeah, so it's this thing again. The file, which one am I doing? File 2, 1, 1. And then you said minus 1, didn't you, Bexy, right?
Yeah.
That's perfect. So I've got to use, you could either use, I'd sometimes put everything in brackets just to make it a bit neater, but I don't think you might not need to there. But yeah, so basically just like maths, you can literally just say, so this is a number, file 2, 1, 1 is the number 608. So if I minus 1, it's 607. So I've created a range here from 1 to 607. Yeah?
Yeah.
So we're actually going to do this. Yeah, I don't know if you want to type it or you're doing it, but I'm going to use that code. That's going to be inside. That's what we're going to. that's going to be our for loop. That's our range that we're looking for. I need a new letter. I need a new letter here, so I'm going to just put the letter K. I'm doing a new for loop. I'm going to put an end from a for loop. Okay, so for the value from that range 1 to 607, it's going to loop through from 1. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and for each time, K is going to be 1, then K is going to be 2, then K is going to be 3. Where do I want to put K in each of those loops? Where do I want to put it?
Something to do with the matrix.
That sounds out of context. That sounds, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I want to put it in my matrix somewhere, right? This is my frame. These are my frame numbers that don't exist, right? These are my 1 to 607 frame numbers that I didn't code.
Yeah. And
each time I want to put them in. I want to put them somewhere every time, which is actually what we did this in the second bit, right? We did this. This is our range for our frame numbers, and we put them each time. We put them in matrix. We put them in the row, whatever row it is, column 1. So what would we write? What do you think we'd write here to do? So let's say K equals 1, okay? So we're doing it the first time round, frame number 1. Where do I want to put that in my matrix? Where do I want to put that in this file? Where do I want to put the number 1?
In the first line.
Yeah, so first row in which column?
1.
Yeah, and then when that's done, where do K will become number 2, because it will go up 1 in this range. Where do I want to put the number 2?
The second row.
Second row, first column. So which row do I want to put it in each time? Instead of putting a hard like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which row do I want to put it in?
Oh, row.
Sorry?
Oh, row.
Nearly. R doesn't exist yet. Oh. So we're using a different number here. So we're looking at a range from 1 to 607 that we're calling K.
The length?
The K is our frame number, right? From 1 to 607. So when K equals 1, so if I just write, I'm going to do this thing again where we have like matrix 1, as you said, like the number 1 is going to go in row 1, column 1. And that's going to equal 1. And then I want row 2, column 1 on the second loop to become the number 2. And then I want, when it loops again and K becomes 3, I want the number 3 to go into row 3, column 1. So each time, this is when K equals 1. This is when K equals 2. Because it's looping through. K is changing every loop. K equals 3. So what row, in terms of a variable, what row do I want it to go into each time? None of them. Sorry?
The K row.
Yeah, it's going to go into the K row. It's basically doing what we're doing down here with the I, but we're calling it K this time. So we're going into the K row every time. And which value am I putting in the K row? Because I can't write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Which value is going in? So when K equals 1, we're putting the number 1 in. When K equals 2, we're putting the number 2 in. When K equals 3, we're putting the number 3 in. So what can we replace the number with?
K.
K.
I was like, is it just that simple? Yeah.
Yeah, so we're putting, and again, it's actually hard. Weirdly, it's harder because the frame number equals the row number. It's in a way it's easier, but it's also more confusing because K actually represents 2 things for us. Here it represents the frame number and it represents the row number. So actually, because we're putting in the frame number into a row number, which is why they're both K, because the number 1 is going into row 1, the number 2, frame number 2 is going to row 2, etc., etc. And that's it. If you put a semicolon, that should fill That should fill your numbers. Hopefully.
Fact.
No, that sound.
No, what did I do wrong? File 1. I'm still in file 1 right here. Oh, it doesn't like. Bracket. Oh, good.
Nice. Cool. And that's it. And it'll be it'll be the same thing for when we put the coding in with all the ones and zeros. It's kind of the same thing. Instead of saying which row we're going to put it in, we're going to say which column we're going to put it in based on the value of the code. So if you've coded a number 1, we're going to put it in, well, I've got mine going into column, I've got the frame numbers going into column 7 on my other one, but yeah, cool. How was that? Probably confused. Was it a lot? It's quite confusing? How was that?
It's really good. Thank you, Dean.
Really helpful. I don't think I'd have been able to learn like now you've gone through it, it's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's really like, it's actually a lot easier than when you try and sometimes learning it online.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you're doing that thing when you're doing the sort of when k equals 1, what is, 1 sort of thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That actually really helped me be like, yeah, we just need to, it's just R, it's just K.
Right. It's also nice that we've got a context that we know about as well with the coding and the frame numbers, I guess. It's nice to learn within that context as well. I really recommend like almost trying to do this again from scratch, using it as a reference and almost copying it and typing it again. It's always useful to type things out again because then you question, like you remind yourself, oh yeah, I'm putting a range in here and I'm doing this and that. Really useful to try and write it again. But I really find it useful to use the command window, so not putting in those sometimes not putting in those semicolons to start with to see what I'm actually, what if it's not working, I'm like, why? What's it doing every loop? What's it actually, for each loop that it's doing, what's it actually printing? So using the command window, using the workspace to see what it's creating, and just have a play. There are lots of great videos on YouTube about for loops as well that explain them. And this is a little more complicated because we've got what they call a nested for loop. So we've nested one for loop inside another for loop, but it's what you normally do when you want to look through all the columns and all the rows, or a certain number of columns and then a number of rows. And you need to do them sequentially like we did. But yeah, nice, amazing.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna attempt, I think, later on this week to try and work out how to do the columns myself.
Yeah, see if yes. Yeah, so I would so that'd be amazing. You can do 2 things. So one thing just to bear in mind is that you've currently got your frame numbers going into column 1. So the way I do it is I get it to read what the code is, and then I put it in that column number, if that makes sense. I turn the code value into a variable and I make that the column number. But obviously your column 1 here is taken up. So you could just change a column number for this frame 1 instead of putting it into here. You've got your column going into all the frames going into column 1. You could change that if you want to just temporarily put that into like column 7 or something, get it out of the way. That might help you do that. Or you can do some other things and shift stuff with plus, like if you put +1 or +2 on and things on the variables, it will also move around your columns and stuff. But yeah, definitely that'd be cool. Yeah, I'll have a think about yours as well, Crystal, because you haven't got a number 2 and 3. So yeah, I've got an idea of what you could do to shift it, but you can yeah.
I was thinking this because I don't know what Ira does when he doesn't have, when he just puts zeros or something in it, doesn't he? He uses the same. And
yeah, I mean, yeah, you could have columns 2 and 3. It's just loads of zeros, and actually that might make it even more. To be honest, it makes your code even more. And actually, Demetrius did something really nice, where it doesn't matter how many from the code value from like 1 to 6 or 1 to 5. The thing he's done, I need to change mine. It makes no difference what your coding values are or how many you've got. So instead of specifying column numbers, he uses the maximum, like the minimum and maximum number in that coding value to determine what the range, like how many columns to have and stuff, which is the right way to do it. But yeah, I think having the column 2 and 3 as loads of zeros makes no difference. It's not gonna matter for you. It's more, it means you can reuse the code for other types if you need to. But yeah, definitely have a play.
I'm guessing that's what Ira's done as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure, because I imagine he looks at the other ones as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, just have a play. If you can get it to like list out the codes and all of that. It is going to go inside this same for loop because you need to do it for each frame number. So it's going to go in here. It's going to go in here basically. You're going to, it's where you're going to print. That's where you're going to print the code value. Yeah, you might need to declare something earlier, but yeah, we can go through. That's what we'll do next time. I guess we'll go through that code and thing, but have a go. And yeah, just play around with for loops and ranges of numbers, the length thing, and just see if you can get it to do stuff.
It's so helpful. I feel like I've learned so much just now.
Good, nice. Yeah, it's a lot. I find it quite hard. Like when I started this like a few weeks ago, I was like wrapping my head around what's looping through what. Like it's super confusing. And when you start substituting it, like what letter do I need to put in to replace this and that? That's why I find it sometimes quite useful just to go through like the logic of like in like plain English, like what am I actually printing in each of these rows? What am I printing? Like what's
yeah. Me and Bexy have had it easy because you spent all the time working this out, and now we don't have to have all these struggles.
No, it's fine. Yeah, it's cool. It's fine. It wasn't too bad. Yeah.
Because I can imagine like me trying to learn this myself. Like I see the extra hours it's in. Like what variable do I need to have here to make this?
Exactly. Mm. Then we'll do the syncing thing with the LED as well. Get that going. And we'll add the mum in. We'll add the second code into the same matrix. You have a really wide one where they're all together. Actually, that's something you could do. Is you could also put in the frame numbers for the other one because you've actually got 2 files you're loading in. Mm-hmm. So actually, and that's going to require you're going to need to put it in a different column, and you're going to need to use a different file name. So that's definitely something you can go and do is put in the other one as well. Cool. Nice.
Yeah, and put it in like a column.
Yeah, and another. Yeah, and you can always move them around later. Nice. Any other questions or anything you want to check?
Good for now.
Yeah.
If we can put in another one of these,